Last week was controversial because we talked about the mixed multitude, and we were considering that situation. This week we're looking at Numbers chapter 12, and this deals with what I would title as Miriam's sin, but what most people would probably have titled, if they have a Bible that's been titled in the last, 50 years, since the hippie revolution, it probably says Moses' Ethiopian wife, or maybe even Moses' black wife, depending on how modern you get. And so there's a lot that we have to consider in this situation. It's really sad because you have to surmount false accusations against Moses that are implied to be true. And because they're implied to be true, if they are true, they make a different opinion of what we talked about last week: interracial marriage, segregation, a lot of things we've already discussed in this Bible study and past Bible studies. The argument basically you'll run into is going to say something like, well, if Moses married a Ethiopian, which we know modernly Ethiopians are all black, or something of that sort, Arab, something to that effect, then if that's happened, then there's no really good objection to say Moses would be preaching against it. And so Kenists will often bump into this, if you are a Kenist, as we call it now, which that term didn't even exist like 20 years ago. But if that's what you are, you're pro-marrying your own kind, your own race, then you're going to come into somebody who's going to raise this as one of their highest objections, and there's a bunch of others. We're not covering that subject, but we're covering this chapter, and therefore we have to talk about it. So what we're going to be looking at is, what is the actual truth of the chapter? What is this actually saying? And I will show you from commentaries today, not just from my own opinion and my own assessment of the text, but what men like John Gill, Adam Clark, the Geneva Commentary, and almost every serious scholar before 50 years ago believed this text was talking about, and it had nothing to do with the race of Moses' wife. So we got some of that we're going to discuss some. And we'll split this chapter up to be read by Levi and Christian if they're willing to do that, just to keep everybody engaged. So we got 16 verses here, meaning there's 8. So if one of you would like to read to 8, then the other can pick up at 9 and move their way to the end.
I'll read verse 8. So Numbers chapter 12. And Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. And they said, Hath the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Hath he not spoken also by us? And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very meek above all the men which were upon the face of the earth. And the Lord spake suddenly unto Moses, and unto Aaron, and unto Miriam, Come out ye three unto the tabernacle of the congregation. And they three came out. And the Lord came down in the pillar of the cloud, and stood in the door of the tabernacle, and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And he said, Hear now my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known unto him in a vision, and will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all mine house. With him will I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches, and the similitude of the Lord shall he behold. Wherefore then were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses?
And the anger of the Lord was kindled against them, and departed. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said unto Moses, Eliam, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us wherein we have done foolishly, and wherein we have sinned. Let her not be as one day, of whom the flesh is half consumed, when he cometh out of his mother's womb. And Moses cried unto the Lord, saying, Heal her now, O God, I do search thee. And the Lord said unto Moses, If her father had but spit in her face, should she not be ashamed 7 days? Let her be shut out from the camp 7 days, and after that let her be received in again. And Miriam was shut out from the camp 7 days, and the people journeyed not till Miriam was brought in again. And afterwards the people removed from Hezrah and pitched in the wilderness of Paran.
All right. Well, so to look at the subject matter, you kind of have to go over a little bit of history, I guess, as far as what is going on here to get an understanding of things, and then just kind of pay attention to the text. Like I said, I've got a couple commentaries I'm going to throw into today's study just to help show that the opinion that's common today is not the common opinion of the past, not by any intelligible scholar at least. And one of the arguments pretty much goes like this: well, Miriam's flesh got turned white. This was kind of like showing you that being white's not that big, like not a like it's a bad thing, or like being proud of your whiteness. You can see the tones, which quite honestly is just kind of that you have to kind of create that's the punishment suits the crime. This is like a form of lex talionis or something, like, oh, you want to be white? I'm going to make you really white. And so that's always added into there by those who promote this idea. And they imply the very first statement out of verse 1, Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married. And they say, well, like I said, Ethiopians are black. And so because they're black, what they're doing is they're basically speaking against him because he had married a black woman. And so the punishment is that she's now gleaming white with leprosy. That's the usual way in which this is being toned. Now, I will point out, number one, first thing you have to realize is that the word in the Hebrew text is Cush. So it's a Cushite, actually. Cush is a son of Ham, a brother to Mizraim, which is the Hebrew word for an Egyptian. And these are not even direct terms, but these are geographic terminologies of the Greek language. So we get the word Ethiopian from the Greek, and it literally means something to the effect of like burnt face. Okay? So people say, see, talk about black people. Burnt face. That's what it means. Problem is if we're talking about black people, her body's burnt. It's not just her face. So that doesn't even really add up. But the Ethiopian area geographically has always been in northern Africa, Yemen, which is in the Middle East. And so it's not even just in Africa, but it crosses the barrier. The Queen of Sheba would have come from the same area. Sheba is one of the places in the land of Cush. And the land of Cush went as far as what to this day we still call the Hindu Kush Mountains in India. And so that whole area was kind of dominated by a big tribe of people called Cushites. And the term Ethiopian is a Greek term. It's not even a Hebrew term. It's not an English term. And it is the way in which they refer to the people who apparently lived there in Greek times. And so with that being said, number one, you have to arrive with what's called a presupposition to the text that Ethiopians are black by race. Now, if you look at it from the way that a polygenist would look at this, Noah's white, his wife's white, because the word Adam implies a white complexion. It means that you blush, you're fair enough to blush. So Noah's a white man. Noah's sons are white men. Noah's sons' wives are white men because they wouldn't have destroyed their genealogies, which is the whole reason why God preserves them, that they're pure in their generations. And getting off the boat, they have white children. So either God creates magically, as in the Tower of Babel, some people would believe and say, oh, well, that's where God makes black people out of white people. He burns some of them and says, you're going over here and you guys are going here. Some people believe that. But the Bible doesn't say that. It only talks about the tongue of the people being separated. Interestingly enough, even the Ethiopians, while they speak Coptic anciently, there's an Ethiopian dialect and Yemen dialect that is very akin to Semitic. So even in the tongue, it's not horribly different. It's not hugely and vastly different. So from a polygenist perspective, if you're reading it from the way I would read the text, you can't be dealing with race because Cush is the same race as the Egyptians. The Egyptians, as we were talking about last week, were also a Caucasian people, a white people. The Israelites, the Shemites, were a white people. The Japhethites were a white people. So we aren't even dealing with the subject of race. You have to imply that into the text first and foremost, that a Cushite was definitely a sub-Saharan African, like we know them today.
The Egyptians came from Ham, right?
Yeah, Mizraim.
But they weren't of the stock of Canaan.
Right. Yeah. The word Egypt is once again the Greek word. So we say Egyptians, but in Hebrew it's Mizraim,
Right.
the sons of Mezar.
Okay.
Yeah, it's Mezarine. So all the words we use to describe the known people, Syria, Egypt, Ethiopia, are Greek transliterations from our text. So let me point that out first as we get into it. And this is by no means what I'm going to hang my argument on. I'm just simply pointing out the text itself doesn't even say what people apply. But even with that, you come into the presupposition. You got to is the presupposition true?
Yeah, there's layers to this. Meaning, like, if you hold to polygenesis, this isn't even an issue.
Exactly.
You know, it's not. Why would we even be talking about this? Really, the only reason why you're talking about this is if you hold to a monogenesis.
Monogenesis view that says they got off the ark different races.
Yeah.
Like that, you have to start there. Or maybe at the Tower of Babel, but even that's getting really close to your timeline to have a whole nation of people populated.
Right.
So, you're getting too close to timelines. So with that being stated, we have that. So here's one thing that we know. We do know that Moses is being spoken against by Miriam and Aaron. However, Miriam is the chief. She's a woman, but she is a prophetess, so she needs her due honor. And it is definitely concerning the marriage that he has. It says, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. But here's what they said. So let's look at the actual text of what was stated. It says, and they said, so here's what God gets angry at. He says, hath Yahweh or the Lord indeed spoken by Moses? Has he not spoken also by us? And the Lord heard it. So you remember in the last chapter, the mixed multitudes murmuring and all the Israelites start to murmur. Now, in the very center of the camp of Moses, his own brother and sister are murmuring against it. So the one thing I definitely want to point out is that we're told what the problem here is. It's a murmuring issue. It's once again a power grab. If you want to get down to it, it's a light form of feminism is what it is. Miriam wants more power, and Aaron apparently is kind of listening in on this. Okay. Well, yeah, he's spoken by both of us. That's true. Should Moses have all the power? Should Moses have this? It's also important to remember this is happening in the book of Numbers. We don't have this record anywhere else. Why is it in the book of Numbers? Well, Numbers is about the numbering of the people. Who a man marries becomes part of his family, part of the marriage numbering. As numbers work out as they're part of the church structure, the church government of society, it all is connected. So who Moses marries is an important issue. So this is something that you definitely have to consider, that you have to note that the Lord addresses the speech against Moses and how he is doing his governing. Moses is a leader. Moses is the highest bishop, the archbishop, so to speak. Moses is the judge of the whole congregation. They're moving against him about his governing. What does this say about Moses? Okay? You have to also go back and you need to recall something we've already learned and went over. Deuteronomy chapter 1 and Exodus 18. Go to Exodus 18 real quick. Now, we've gone over all this. Deuteronomy 1 recites Exodus 18 in a nutshell. So here's why this is important, okay? You need to consider this as a very important part of understanding the argument. Moses and Aaron are not arguing with him because of who he married. They're arguing about the influence of this woman's family and who she is on the Israelite government. Exodus 18 verse 1, when Jethro, the priest of Midian, Moses' father-in-law, heard of all that God had done for Moses and for Israel, his people, and that the Lord had brought Israel out of Egypt, then Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took Zipporah, Moses' wife, after he had sent her back, and her 2 sons, of which the names of the one was Gershom, and said, I have been an alien in a strange land. So you know Moses was actually, Ger means traveler. So he had a child in the land of Midian with the priest of Midian, and he named his son stranger in a strange land. That's the meaning of the name. And in 4 it says, and the name of the other was Eliezer, for God, the God of my father, said, he was my help, and he delivered me from the sword of Pharaoh. So Eliezer, God is my help. It's Ezra, same name, and Eli, which is my God, helper. Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, came with his sons and his wife unto Moses in the wilderness, and he encamped in the mount of God. And he said to Moses, I, thy father-in-law Jethro, am come unto thee, and thy wife and her 2 sons with her. And Moses went out to meet his father-in-law, and he did obeisance, and kissed him. And they asked each other of their welfare, and they came into the tent. And Moses told his father-in-law all that Yahweh had done to Pharaoh and to Egypt, and for Israel's sake, and that all traveled, and they had come upon them by the way, and how the Lord delivered them. Jethro rejoiced for all the goodness which Yahweh had done to Israel, whom he had delivered out of the hand of the Egyptians. And Jethro said, Blessed be Yahweh, who has delivered you out of the hand of the Egyptians and out of the hand of Pharaoh, and who has delivered the people from under the hand of the Egyptians. Now I know Yahweh is greater than all gods. So here's Jethro's conversion. He's already a priest of Midian. Midian, let me take you back a minute. Midian is the son of Abraham. He's a Hebrew. Of the stock of Keturah, Moses' 3rd wife. Abraham's 3rd wife. Abraham married Sarah, Hagar, and Keturah. One of the sons of Keturah are Midian. This man is a priest of Midian. He is a Hebrew. So, if these 2 people are the same, Moses' wife Zipporah, this is only a geographical reference of her being an Ethiopian or a Cushite. It has something to do with where their land primarily is and dwells. And we know they were sent to the east. The east of where we predominantly think about in Israel would be in the Yemen, Ethiopian area. So, these men dwelt there in that region, in their tents. Now, also remember, I'm going to keep reading, but also remember this, Jethro, in the prior chapters, if you remember while we were reading, Moses actually tells them at the end of chapter 10, come with us. You remember? It's this discussion. Come with us.
I'm going to go back and read my pen.
Right. And he says, come on, be our guide in the wilderness. And we know some of them stuck around because Jael, the one who hammered, come on, somebody help me. Sisera and Jabin, hammered the one guy's head into the dirt. She was a Kenite of this line. So we know some of them actually lived with Israel in the desert. They were still there. So now look at what happens in verse 12. After Jethro's total conversion, he says, now I'm a follower of Yahweh. I'm only going to be a follower of Yahweh. Verse 12, Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, took a burnt offering and sacrifice for God and Aaron. He came unto all the elders, the presbytery of Israel. So he meets with all the highest men, and they eat bread. They have communion together, so to speak. Which is a meal, a godly meal of sacrifices, and Moses' father-in-law before God. And it came to pass that on the morrow Moses sat to judge the people, and the people stood by Moses. I hope you're starting to see a picture of why Moses and Aaron are mumbling at this point. And Moses stood from morning to evening, and when Moses' father-in-law saw it, all he did to the people, he said, What is the thing that you do to the people? Why sittest thou thyself alone, and all the people stand by thee from morning to evening? And Moses said unto his father-in-law, Because the people come unto me to inquire of God, and when they have a matter, they come unto me, and I judge between one another, and I do make them know the statutes of God and his laws. Moses' father-in-law said unto him, This thing that you do is not good. Thou wilt surely wear away, both thou and this people. That is with thee. This thing is too heavy for thee. You are not able to perform it for yourself alone. Hearken now to my voice. So listen to what Jethro, Moses' father-in-law, is going to give advice now. Hearken to my voice. I will give counsel to thee, and God shall be with thee. Be thou for the people to Godward, that thou, speaking Moses, you Moses, will bring the causes to God, and thou shalt search them out ordinances and laws, and you shall show them the way wherein they must walk, and the work that they must do. Moreover, you shall provide out of all the people able men such as fear God, men of truth, hating covetousness, and place them over them to be rulers of thousands, and rulers over hundreds, and rulers over 50s, and rulers over 10s. Let them judge the people at all seasons, and that it be every great matter they will bring unto you, not unto Moses, or not unto Aaron and Miriam, but unto you. You notice the factor here is that Moses is given the primary position as judge in the assessment of the father-in-law. And this thing pleases everybody. So if you would continue to read, which we've read this many times, so I'm not going to continue to read it, I just want to point this out. Moses hearkens, 24, to the voice of his father-in-law, and he does all that he says. And Moses chose able men out of all Israel, made them to be heads over the people, rulers, as he says. They judged the people at all seasons, but the hard causes they brought to Moses, and every small matter they judged themselves. Now, with that knowledge, and with us also realizing Moses' father-in-law's family is still traveling with Israel in part, now consider Numbers chapter 12 one more time, and just think about what the argument's actually about. Just remember, just because the word Ethiopian and Cush is used here doesn't mean this is a different woman. It's the same woman, and it's a matter of government. So look at the matter of government. Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of, let me just get rid of the word Ethiopian, because of the woman whom he had married. For he had married a woman. But we know who that is, right? And they said, has the Lord indeed spoken only by Moses? Has he not spoken by us? And the Lord heard it. Now the man Moses was very meek above all the men that were upon the face of the earth. And the Lord spoke suddenly unto Moses and unto Aaron, and said unto Miriam, come out, ye three, unto the tabernacle of congregation. And they three came out. And the Lord came down in a pillar and a cloud, and he stood in the door of the tabernacle, and called Aaron and Miriam, and they both came forth. And he said, now hear my words. If there be a prophet among you, I, the Lord, will make myself known in a vision. I will speak unto him in a dream. My servant Moses is not so, who is faithful in all my house. With him I speak mouth to mouth, even apparently, and not in dark speeches. In the similitude of Yahweh shall he behold. Therefore, then, were ye not afraid to speak against my servant Moses? The whole argument here is not about who he married. The argument is the influence the priest of Midian is having on the government. The whole thing is like, well, did God actually endorse this? I mean, he's saying that this guy is going to judge. You know, Moses is the only judge here. Doesn't God speak to us too? Aren't we just as important? So, if you come to the conclusion without all the context of what already happened in the Scripture concerning who Jethro is and what very important impact Jethro made in the Israelite Presbyterian church government, and state government for that matter, you'll be drawn away to some kind of other conclusion about this argument's about who he married. No, it's not about who he married. It's about why is this guy and his family influencing Moses? Shouldn't we all have a just place at this table? Shouldn't we all be able to say what goes on here? Shouldn't we all be sitting as judges? Does Moses speak alone, or do we all see God? And God clearly tells him, not like Moses, you don't. And it also says that he was a very meek and humble person, and so Moses is never going to get haughty, apparently, out of this, because he doesn't have to. God defends him. So if you continue to look at the text, in verse 9 it says, the anger of Yahweh was kindled against them, and he departed. And the cloud departed from off the tabernacle, and behold, Miriam became leprous, white as snow. And Aaron looked upon Miriam, and behold, she was leprous. And Aaron said to Moses, alas, my Lord, I beseech thee, lay not the sin upon us. I find that interesting, because I think Aaron's like, oh no, it's going to get me next, and it never does. Wherein we have done foolishly, wherein we have sinned. And let her not be as one dead, of whom flesh is half consumed when it comes out of his mother's womb. And Moses cried unto Yahweh, saying, heal her now, O God, I beseech thee. And Yahweh says unto Moses, if her father would have spit in her face, should she not be ashamed for 7 days? Let her be shut up out of the camp for 7 days, and then she can come back in and be received. Miriam was shut out of the camp 7 days. The people journeyed Not till Miriam was brought in again, and afterwards the people were moved, and they pitched their tents elsewhere.
There would have been a lot of shame in that, because literally over 1 million, possibly even over 2 million people did not move because they knew because of Miriam's rebellion against Moses.
Yeah, she doesn't live in this one down.
So literally everyone knew. The shame itself was probably worse than the physical punishment of leprosy.
Mm-hmm.
Go ahead, Daniel.
The other thing that I think possibly could be playing into it is Miriam herself, like you said, was the one kind of leading it, and if Moses was kind of like a meek and humble person, God later was saying that I speak directly to Moses. And when she was saying, can't we all have a voice? It seems to me that the issue with this Ethiopian woman is that
she's influenced.
Yeah, he's afraid of her particular counsel and nobody else, because Moses says so meek and humble, perhaps they were afraid that she was kind of working him.
Sure. She is.
But God responds and says, no, I speak to Moses directly.
Yeah, well, I think the point is, if you couple the situations together and you look at Deuteronomy 1, God endorses Jethro's position.
Right.
Well, just chapter 4 and 11 and 16, it's when it finally gets, just explains it, and we get either seconded or it just starts then. I'm not sure exactly. We covered it last week about how it just comes, and so this is a chapter it's coming right after, so maybe we'll still stir it up.
Well, once again, we're in the book of Numbers. The numbering Numbers is referring to is the tens, fifties, hundreds, and thousands numbering system that is all throughout Scripture. It's in the military, it's in the church, it's in the state, it's in the eldership, it's everywhere. It's what God's designed it as, apparently. But if you go looking in the Bible, you're going to find Jethro's name authorizing the, situation. So I don't know what the Egyptians did. They probably didn't do the same thing, but the people were used to whatever the Egyptians do. And I don't think you should overlook that Miriam's a woman. You really can't overlook the fact that Miriam, she's a prophetess, and she has a high place in the Scripture, and I'm not taking that away. I mean, she actually shares the name with Jesus' mother. So, there's nothing innately wrong with her, but women in church leadership is not God's design. The Bible's pretty clear about that. And if she's jockeying for a position, which she is doing, and she's even trying to work Aaron, and Aaron seems to be somewhat easy to work. I mean, he is the guy that went and fashioned the golden calf, after all, because the people pressured him, right? So Miriam is now trying to work Aaron. Hey, priest, get over on my, you're the priesthood, you're the high priest, get on my side on this, and we can have women in leadership. I don't think it's any different than what they did when they first got women in leadership in the United States, contrary to John Knox's advice that we were once following. So you have to plug that into it, that women in leadership is not God's design, that this is a feminist plot to some extent, and it can't be looked at any differently, that that's the case. And so I think what Danielle said is actually a really good point. There's probably some fear that Moses, not just the wife, but the wife's family, is influencing us way too much. And if they get influence, maybe we should have influence. Or Miriam particularly. I mean, she's the only one cursed. God doesn't curse both of them. So she is definitely the number one culprit.
It's interesting that God kind of calls on her headship, if her father's sickness.
That's right.
So because I don't know if she's married or not, but that would be her headship if she isn't married. She kind of the next person in line. Should be.
That's actually a really good point, that he does make that point. He's like, if her father would have spit in her face, she'd be ashamed for 7 days. How much more should she be ashamed if I punish her and Moses is against her? That's actually a really good point, because most likely Moses' father's dead. Moses is the oldest son. She's not just speaking out against her brother. She's also speaking out against her headship. That is a very good point if she's not married. And nothing in the Bible does suggest that Miriam was married. So that's something very interesting to consider.
So I have a question. So what you're saying is that the Ethiopian woman here is Zipporah.
Yes.
Okay, so, and you're just saying because she lived in the land of are you saying that she is a Cushite or that she is a Midianite?
Probably a Cushite by street address, so to speak, because her people were a wandering nomadic people.
Okay, so she was a Midianite physically, but she was a Cushite geographically.
Right, because Jethro is said to be a priest of Midian. So he would have had to have been of lineal descent. He would have been descended from the Midian.
Okay, but where do you, is there any other scripture that points towards, other than Jethro being like a nomadic type person, is there any other scripture that points towards Jethro or any of the Midianite people living in Cush?
Well, the only text in all of Scripture that even says that anything about a Cushite wife and Moses' wife being identified is this Scripture. That's the only one. So in Exodus 3:1, it says Midianite. In 18:1, it says Midianite. But interestingly enough, they're all called Kenites in Judges 1:16, Judges 4:11, Judges 4:17, and Judges 5:24 all actually identify them as Kenites. So there's actually 3 titles given to Moses' father-in-law's family, and the Cushite aspect of this only applies to this particular chapter. It's the only place where that word has actually occurred. Okay. And it's a geographical region. Cush is mostly used as a geographical region in Scripture as far as a place name.
Okay, I got the 3 names of the whether it's a Cushite, a Midianite, or a Kenite.
Mm-hmm.
Either maybe I didn't understand you, or I just I'm a little bit confused on how this is. Yeah, I'm trying to see.
Well, there's some people that come to the table with the presupposition Moses had 3 wives or 2.
I know there is.
And there's really not any evidence for it, particularly in Scripture. There's nothing that says anywhere in the Scripture that there were 2 wives assigned to Moses. It only ever speaks in the singular form of Moses' wife. So, and Moses' father-in-law. And it seems every time, like for instance in Judges 1:16, that's not the right verse, it's not 1:16. Moses. Oh, that's because I'm in Jude, not Judges. That would do it.
I got it right here. And the children of the Kenite, Moses' father-in-law, went up out of the city of the palm trees with the children of Judah into the wilderness of Judah, which lies in the south of Arad, and they went and dwelt among the people.
Okay. You want to read 4:11 also?
Sure. Now, Heber the Kenite, which was of the children of Hobab, the father-in-law of Moses,
which is just another spelling of Jethro, yeah,
had severed himself from the Kenites and pitched his tent unto the plain of Zenaim, which is by Kadesh.
And 17 continues that thought if you just want places where that's referenced.
Let them see. Kenite used between you. Okay, but okay. So this area right here in 11, and pitched his tent in the plain of Zenaim, which is by Kadesh. Is that near Cush?
Well, that's once they're already living in Israel. Kadesh Barnea is what it's referring to. That's already in the plains of Israel. They're already moved into the land with the people, but they're not living on a land inheritance because they're not Israelites. So they live on the fields in Kadesh because they're a nomadic people. And if you're living with Israel and you're not part of the tribes, you don't get any land.
Can I mention something too?
Sure. I mean, unless Christians got more to say.
Well, I'm just trying to I'm just saying so there is or there is not any other scripture that would indicate that the Midianites at any time were living in the land of Cush.
Well, I couldn't tell you that because I haven't searched it out. All I can tell you is Numbers 12:1 is the only time in the whole Bible where Moses' father-in-law or wife is referred to as a Cushite. the only place in Scripture. And so the only assessment is that it's either a street address or it's some kind of other terminology of a joint kingdom. You have maybe like, the Midianites and the Moabites had a joint kingdom further north, but then you also you could have had a joint kingdom of Cush and Midian, for all we know. I mean, there's no 100% way to be sure of how those allegiances and alliances all work.
And the other option is that he would have had multiple wives, or that Zipporah was dead and he.
Well, once again, we only have one name for Moses' wife, Zipporah, in all of Scripture. She's only ever called it Moses' wife, Zipporah, and there's no other lineage given in any of the genealogies for a second wife. I mean, it wouldn't offend me if he had one.
No, I knew that.
I do know
You think should be mentioned? Moses was pretty.
Well,
the children would be mentioned.
The Book of Jubilees, which Jasher, my fault, is the only text which has been proven to be erroneous, like written in the 1800s, erroneous, is the only text that anybody cites and says, well, he had two wives. He had a Cushite wife that was actually a Canaanite, if I remember the theory right. And she was a leftover from back when his prince days, when he married some princess of Cush or something and brought her along. And then, there's like a pseudo-biblical view that people use to say that this is a totally different wife. But as far as from the text of Scripture itself, nobody says that. And most Bible commentaries do not. I mean, you could say, well, that's because they're slanted against polygamy, but I don't think, or polygamy technically, but I don't think that that's accurate because, well, nobody does that with David and all the other guys in the Bible. So,
that is a pretty good point because, I mean, all of the important men in the Bible, they mention all the children from the different wives.
Oh yeah, David's got 8 wives, and you know every son that was born to each one.
Yeah, so you would think that Moses would.
Abraham too.
Abraham. I could see that. I'm asking these questions because I'm like, well, if someone ever asks me these questions, I'm like, I need to have an answer to where that I feel like confident, like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, I mean, the biggest objection is going to be, like, some people literally say, well, that's a racial term, Ethiopian. So all Midianites are black is what they'll assume. They'll say, well, yeah, she's a Midianite, but see, Midianites must have been black in these days because this is a racial terminology. This is like, and they'll try to use that as like another argument. Or they'll say, see, Canaanites were all black, or whatever word they choose. They'll use that as like almost like some kind of a racial term to describe what she looked like. And that corresponds to the Miriam gets turned white, and that's the Ken Ham flip. Ken Ham kind of does that. Which I think he's dead now. So.
No, he's still alive.
Is he really?
Yeah, he just put out a video not too long ago. Yeah, it would be.
He's been pushing his Marxism for a while on this subject.
Yeah.
The thing I wanted to mention is like when you're dealing with Ruth being Moab, being considered a Moabitess.
Right.
And then you go back and look, they were actually there for a period of time because of this drought. And all of a sudden, weren't they Benjamites?
Mm.
Yeah. But a bunch of Benjamites get grouped in now as Moabites because of their location. It'd be the equivalent of us being called Native Americans now that we've been here for generations.
Yeah. I mean, I get it. I understand the argument, the Ruth argument. But I just feel like that there are several specific geographical scriptures where you could actually have like a pretty good argument, like, yeah, this is a conquered territory by Israel, but the people still call it Moab.
Well, I think that would be a good thing to consider. I will say, and I did mention this, it says that Keturah's children, Midian being one of them, went to the east whenever they received their inheritance, and they did not inherit with Jacob. And to the east of where Syria is, where they're living, Canaan and Syria, would take you into the Yemeni, which Yemen's considered Cush. It would take you into that direction. Now, where they settled in that direction, how big that region was, I mean, right. Cush was a big region at one time, actually. And some pretty notable characters ruled over Cush and from Cush, Nimrod being the biggest. He was a Cushite. So how like I said, how you're going to divide that up and say, well, did Midian's land inheritance fall within the empire of Cush or something like that? Maybe.
Okay.
You know what I mean?
So all these commentaries that you brought up, Adam Clark and Gill and everybody else, the Genevan people, you're saying they make the same connection.
They make similar. I have some quotes I'll read, but they have some similar connections, and I only pulled out what helps, I guess, defeat the presupposition that she's a black lady. I didn't really pull everything out I could, but there's plenty out there to read on the subject, and I don't know if you'll find any, honestly, that will talk about the racial aspect, like the possibility of it.
Yeah, I was about to say, in any of these commentaries, did they even bring up, like, that there's some that believe this, but we don't even...
They don't even mention it.
Yeah, so it wasn't even in their mindset.
No. Like Matthew
That's actually hilarious.
Matthew Henry, let me read you what Matthew Henry says.
It just goes to show how powerful culture is.
Absolutely.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Read into your mind.
Yeah.
Matthew Henry says, 2 things they quarreled with Moses about. 1, about his marriage. Some think the late marriage with a Cushite or Arabian. Others because Zipporah, whom on this occasion they called in scorn an Ethiopian woman, and who had insinuated had too great an influence upon Moses in the choice of the 70 elders. So
he kind of did bring up a different nation, though.
Well, yeah, but it's not a racial insinuation. He's not insinuating that, well, it's because she's a black lady. He says it's the influence upon the choice of the elders.
Which would have to come back.
It'd be a cultural thing.
Yeah. Perhaps there was some private falling out between Zipporah and Miriam, so he's just supposing, maybe, which occasioned some hot words, and one peevish reflection introduced another, till Moses and Aaron came to be interested. About his government, too, second point, about his government, it was not about his mismanagement of it, but the monopolizing of it. And then he quotes Numbers 12:2, "Has the Lord spoken only by Moses? Must he alone have the choice of the persons whom the spirit of the prophecy shall come?" Because if you remember the prior chapters when we read, the Spirit of God fell upon the elders. "Has he not spoken also by us? Might not we have had the hand in that affair and prefer our friends as well as Moses, his friends?" So once again, the argument's totally government-based.
Yeah. They're focused on government.
Yeah.
Okay, so but you were the only one. I understand these commentators are bringing up this an argument over government, but is there any other commentator that's bringing up the connection to Exodus 18 and Jethro?
The first one mentioned the 70 elders, which is after comes back before because it's the only.
Yeah.
Oh, that's because that's where the 70 elders were mentioned.
Yeah,
No. Well, the 70 elders was Numbers chapter 10.
We just read that in the last chapter, and then they talk about, and then he's also speaking of that in connection to Jethro's dealings with appointing how the form of government.
Who? Matthew Henry or
Matthew Henry.
And it's okay. So he's connecting it back to Numbers 10, and then he's saying Numbers 10 is connected with Exodus 18.
Mm-hmm.
I see. Okay.
Yeah. I did find some talk of a Jewish Talmudic thought on the subject that, interestingly enough, starts to recommend the idea of race. Leave it to the Jews to start talking about that. But yeah, there is some Jewish stuff that has talked about that in the past. But the Geneva commentary, for instance, here's all it says. It's not very much, but it says, "Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses because of the Ethiopian woman whom he had married, for he had married an Ethiopian woman. Zipporah," they're saying Zipporah is the woman, so it's like A, and then you look at A, and A says Zipporah. Then it says this, "Moses' wife was a Midianite, and because Midian bordered on Ethiopia, or Cush, it is sometimes referred to in the scripture by this name."
Okay, so Geneva does give an that's like pretty much exactly what you're presenting.
Yeah, so that's kind of flowing into it, but when you ask me where in the Bible there's a direct comparison, I don't have those verses.
I gotcha. So, but we do know geographically during the map on that time, Midian was.
And that's what I was saying. It could have been part of the empire or something.
Yeah.
But I don't know how you prove that,
Right, I see.
Yeah.
Okay. I'd like to look at an ancient map and see how close Midian was to Cush, like directly.
Mm-hmm.
And if he goes under it, all the time. larger empire. We use that name, or we could use the small.
Now, I will say most of these commentaries use the word Arab very loosely because Arabs are like the dominant people in the region, or the tent-dwelling people. But Adam Clark says this: Miriam and Aaron spake against Moses. It appears that jealousy of power and the influence of Moses was the real cause of their complaint, though having married an Ethiopian woman. Now, then they have some Hebrew here. It says, the woman, the Cushite, probably meaning Zipporah, who was, it says, an Arab born in the land of Midian, was the ostensible cause. And so this is, once again, why they're saying Arab. Nowhere in the scripture is she referred to as that, so I don't know why Adam Clark chooses to use those words, but he does.
So he actually was saying that she was an Arab.
Well, he applies that broad term to it. In Matthew Henry's, it says Cushite or Arabian. And so, like I said, they're using that like Arabia region, I think, once again, as a regional term. Not really meaning a mixed person, which, like I said, there's nothing in Scripture that even suggests that. Yeah. And there's a lot more in Matthew Henry's commentary, but I would just be reading, continuous reading.
Okay, here we go. We got Cush, Ethiopia. But I don't see any.
Well, like I said, you have to take that. They're looking at maps right now for anybody listening in.
So, I mean, that is kind of bordering right there.
And you do have to jump from Africa over to the Middle East because Cush was Yemen also.
So
Sheba
would be right there, and Cush would be right here, which is, well, that's Egypt. More so bordered with Egypt rather than. Yeah.
So, I guess here's the point. The point is that we have, you have to really read into the text what you want to say. And like I said, there are some Jewish thoughts which I think are predominantly what people probably pull from when they say that Cush is a black person or this, that, or the other thing. And they come out of the Talmud in different targums. So how far you want to take them as biblical truth, I'd object. But let's see here. I'll read one of them that John Gill quotes from a Targum of Jonathan. It says, the Ethiopian woman, because he had married an Ethiopian woman, not a queen of Ethiopia, as the Targum of Jonathan, nor of Therbis, a daughter of the king of Ethiopia. So apparently in some of these Targums they even try to imply that he married some queen of Ethiopia, whom Josephus says he married when he was sent upon the expectation against the Ethiopians when he was in Pharaoh's court, nor the widow of the Ethiopian king, whom he married after his death, when he fled from Pharaoh into Ethiopia and he was made a king. So all this is extra biblical knowledge that supposedly existed out there at some point, and that he's saying are in Targums and in Jewish writings about certain things. When he fled from Pharaoh into Ethiopia, who made a king there, and he was made a king there, as some Jewish writers say. So they even try to say, oh yeah, Moses was king of Ethiopia at one time too. I'm just saying, you start getting into this stuff, you get way into the weeds as far as where you're going to go with the information, you know. And then he goes on to theories about, well, some guy named Ben Melech and Ibn Ezra, who are rabbis of some sort, they say that his wife died, or he divorced Zipporah. I actually say he divorced Zipporah and remarried someone else. And it's just like, well, let's just keep on going, guys. You know?
I would like to. I wonder if Maimonides has a commentary on Numbers 12.
Yeah, maybe.
I'd like to read his opinion on it.
I don't have that on my. I don't have that one on. I don't have that here. Yeah,
because I don't really care. So I would take more into consideration.
Well, he's still taking Talmud into account, though.
I know that, but I have read some of his stuff, and I'm like, that's good insight.
Yeah,
you know,
good musings.
Yeah.
So I don't know if there's much more that we really need to reflect on in this particular situation other than maybe laying the case out just clearly so that everybody kind of understands at least where my position is, siding with the other commentaries on the subject before the 1960 civil rights movement made its impact on Bible commentaries and tried to get people to want to marry outside of their race. But basically the point is that Numbers chapter 12, it's occurring in the book of Numbers, right? It's occurring immediately on the hills of Number chapter 11. That was just in western PA right there, hills. On the heels is the word I was actually looking for. It's occurring on the heels, as in the feet, of Numbers 11. And some of the things that we read in Numbers chapter 10 concerning Moses' father-in-law and the election of the elders, that's also recorded in Numbers 11 whenever we read about the 70 elders who the Spirit of God fell on. So we have immediately before this in Numbers 11, if you remember, right as we were coming into this, there was this situation of God dispersing His Spirit on the people. And so if you remember, Matthew Henry points out that, well, that's important to consider that this is happening right after that because he thinks Miriam is trying to say, hey, you got all your friends ended up getting elected. What about mine? That's how he reads it.
I could see that because, he said all of Israel would prophesy, but it was, okay.
And then taking that back to, we're in Numbers. Numbers is about the numbering of the people. We're dealing with church government. That's what this whole book is about. It's a whole chapter, state and church government. So it occurs in that situation. The mention of her being a Midianite is not there, but her being a Cushite or an Ethiopian. I would argue for the case that this is what some would call by street address. So there was a dwelling probably in a greater region. The greater region was known as Cush. Midian was in that region, most likely. They were Kenites, which was their particular descent from a certain person. And that they settled with Israel eventually, and that Moses' wife, being obviously tightly related to Jethro, or Hobab, having two names, or Raul, there's three names for him in the scripture, is upsetting to Miriam because she's, like Daniel was saying, influencing Moses, and now they have a whole government being structured by the influence of her father, which ticks people off, is obviously ticking her off. And Aaron is a kind of an easy pushover, so big sister Miriam is bullying the kids, basically. Everybody knows if you've got a big family, you know how this goes. It'd be pretty tough to have to rule a country with your brother and sister. Even once your sister becomes a married woman and she's technically someone you should be looking up to and respecting, it's still pretty hard to do that when she leaves the house, right? So you understand how this is going. So, even though Moses is made head judge of the whole nation and God speaks to him face to face, she's still his sister, big sister. I saw you born and put into the bushes,
Well, then on top of that, she's a prophetess.
Well, yeah, she is.
So you're dealing with that too. It's like, okay, I'm a prophetess and you're only talking to God's not talking to me on this behalf. So there could be a pride issue.
I think it's multifaceted.
Yeah. Multiple layers.
Yeah. And then if you think about it, Aaron himself was used by God to be the mouth of Moses because he was so humble and unable to speak.
Mm-hmm.
So now Moses has basically found his own position. Because at first Moses was too afraid to do the job and needed Aaron to do the job for him.
Which goes to show you that Moses doesn't have a strong voice.
Fully given it over to Moses, and there could be a little bit of hey, we had more important of a role in the past. Why are we being deprived of this importance?
That's a very possible situation. However, Miriam is never given that prominent position.
No, not like that.
She sings. She leads the people in singing and the women in dancing. There's nothing wrong with that.
For the right reason.
For the right reason, sure. So it's a government argument. She is not a black woman. She is a Cushite by where she lives, Midianite by who her people are, Kenite by occupation as well as by some form of descent. And that makes her a Hebrew because even one of her relatives' name is Heber, for crying out loud. So it kind of shows you that there's a family connection there. The argument is not about him marrying a woman that's not of the same race. The argument is totally about church government and state government and the way things are structured. What lesson do we learn from this? Arguing with those God has put in position and has endorsed is a bad idea. Picking on somebody's family makeup, their wife and how things have come about after God has sanctified it. If you consider this, God's already sanctified this order. Like, the government is part of the law. It's part of Torah now. It's not like this is negotiable. God says, yep, that's exactly what I had in mind. Jethro just pointed it out to you. Good job, Jethro,
Well, he was a priest.
Yeah, so
we don't know exactly how the priestly system worked in Midian, but we have no idea. I mean, there's a high probability that God revealed himself to him in visions or dreams or whatever.
Well, you can see that he's worshiping God, sitting down with the people, sacrificing with the people, and he's fully participating in the eldership.
Yeah, and who knows what traditions were passed down from
Abraham
and Keturah, going down that lineage.
Whatever came from Abraham could have been stopped when they went to Egypt and the whole government changed with their slaves.
Yeah, well, and Abraham was definitely offering sacrifices, and so Midian definitely saw sacrifices growing up. So.
Well, the consistent like law, covenant theology position of things would suggest that the way God revealed the law was how God always intended it to be from the very beginning. So it was just lost truth revealed, whether it was revealed by God through a vision, like you said, or by some kind of mediation, or whether it was literally passed down father to son from the days of Adam all the way to the days of Jethro. And then Jethro tells Moses, hey, you didn't get taught this because you grew up in Egypt. But all your cousins know this. So, I mean, that could be too. I mean, there's just all kinds of ways that you have to consider this. But, I mean, in the end, here's the truth. God stamped it. He said, we got, 3 books out of the law that are devoted to the subject and 4 books that mention it entirely. And the term is even used in Genesis. So all 5 books of the Pentateuch, of the Torah, all recognize the church government structure that Jethro, told Moses to execute. 2 books absolutely endorse it, tell you how it works and what it was, and the book of Numbers is totally devoted to it. So it's like Miriam's suggestion to totally change government is not a little thing. It's actually very big. It's a big deal. Not only is she jockeying for women in power, but she's also jockeying for something else. Something
totally different civil order.
Yeah, something totally different. I guarantee you, I don't have the text in front of me, but I could almost guarantee that John Knox probably preached on this somewhere. I'll have to go look. So does anybody on the call in or anybody want to comment on anything or make a statement?
Yeah, Brother Josh?
Go for it, Brother Ed.
Okay, this might or might not have significance. I think it does, but let 2 or 3 be the judge. I'm looking at the Strong's Concordance for the word Cush.
Yeah.
H3568. Its Strong's definition says it's the name of a son of Ham and his territory. Then also it's a name of an Israelite. If you go to Psalm 7, I'm going to go there right now, in what they call the title of Psalm 7, which I believe is part of Scripture, it says, Shiggaion of David, which he sang unto Yahweh, concerning the words of Cush, the Benjamite. So people, especially back then, they named their children, the Hebrew names had significance. So I think this might be an evidence there another evidence that this word Cush is not talking about the black race.
Right.
Where?
And now we have a Benjamite who has black skin? I don't think so.
That makes sense.
Well, I just wanted to bring that out.
Yeah.
Ed, where do you, you're looking up the Hebrew word in Numbers 12:1, or what?
Yeah, it's the word Cush. I brought it up while he's talking about it. It's 3571.
Yeah, that's what I got.
And that's the female version.
3568.
Yeah, and then you have to just trace that back. 69 and then 68 also.
Yeah.
So if you go down through the feminine takes you to the masculine, masculine takes you to the root.
Right. I would think that's a pretty strong argument that, this is referring to not only a descendant of Ham, which were not black, but you're talking about a Judahite, Israelite here, a Benjamite, so he couldn't be black skinned. I mean, that should blow that whole theory away.
Well, I'm looking at one of the definitions, and it says Cushi or Ethiopian equals see Cushon, and which is in quotations their blackness.
Yeah, they're probably tying connections there. There's definitely a meaning of being burnt there. There's no doubt. An Ethiopian would imply that same thing. What's the Cushon word number? Because mine doesn't bring that up.
I got 3569.
Mine doesn't even give that on the Strong's.
But it also does say one of the descendants of Cush, the grandson of Noah, through Ham, and a member of that nation or people.
Yeah, so all mine says is a Cushite, a descendant of Cush. Cushite.
But I guess my question too would be,
mine says nothing about dark skin in my Strong's. Interesting. It doesn't even give me that as that Cushon word at all.
So I guess my question would be also. The Ethiopians today, I know they're a black race, but aren't they a mixed race? Mm-hmm. So
they're more of an Arabian. Well, actually, funny enough, as weird as it is, when they do when they used to do physiognomy determinations of race, they measure the head size, they measure length of body parts, and they compare you to all the races in the world to see where you fit in or what you're closest. They come out Caucasian.
Well, I mean, I've seen modern day videos of Ethiopians, and they're a much lighter black skin.
Yeah, they don't share the same skull type with the regular Africans because of whatever mixture they are. They actually share a Caucasoid head, more like the Arabians. Yeah,
so I mean, then I would ask the question. I mean, can we even, let's just say Moses had a second wife, she was an Ethiopian. Can we say that the Ethiopians 3,000 years ago or 3,500 years ago were the same Ethiopians today in Ethiopia?
Well, we actually have bronze and stone sculptures of the people of Sheba and of Yemen. That's 100% proven they're Caucasian. I can show you some. I actually have some on my computer. I'll show you after your service.
Okay.
That's absolutely been blown out of the water as we know that Ethiopia and Africa at one time was dominated by the Caucasian people. Like, that's a well-known fact.
Well, just like the Middle East was mainly a Caucasian people.
Yeah. So the whole idea that this is things as they are now is as they've always been. I mean, most people don't even realize that Egypt, modern day Egyptians, are Arabs. They're invaders from the Crusades. Like they are. The people there before them were Copts, the Coptic race, which is more like an Ethiopian type people, that lived in that region. They're more mixed with European or whatever, Caucasian, whatever you want to call it. They're not even the same race, but we still call an Egyptian of modern descent an Egyptian, but they're actually Arabs, and they came from Arabia. They actually invaded the whole country just like, I don't know, 1,500 years ago or something. Like, it's not even like, this isn't even ancient history. Like, it's ancient history, but it's not so far back we don't know how it happened.
We're not talking before Christ time.
Where we're still not sure how things happened. So, I mean, that just goes to show you there within itself is the people invade, they change. I think the point being made about Native Americans is true, you know. You may live in Ohio, but you aren't you aren't that type of
Or, yeah, I remember
or Mississippi.
Yeah, I had a woke professor when I was in college.